was a point in the process of writing the Brink where you thought about publishing this memoir anonymously because you didn't want it to affect the other areas of your career. You wrote this almost 20 years ago. What was that
Yeah.
turning point for you? And given that we're living in this digital age where there's this unparalleled level of access, for better or for worse, have you seen the impact that your words have had on others?
Well, I have heard from people, particularly my uncle, where he's like a cousin, one of those second cousins removed, and he's a teacher. And he said this would be so important for young people to read to navigate all the pitfalls they can come across in their lives. And so that's what made me think, I did the right thing. This could make a difference. But yes, it is with the unprecedented access, as you say, we are all kind of open books now.
Mm.
So I thought I'd literally open the book. I think I had just finished with my film division. It had been put out in the world, and I was like, what am I going to do next? And I had all these other ideas, but this was something that I had almost ready. I gave it a brush up, and so it was really just the need to feel like I was accomplishing something.
There's also so much vulnerability as well as courage that you have to tap into when you're recounting these experiences in your life and the person that you used to be. Was that ever a scary prospect? Was there a story that you were kind of on the fence about including?
That's a really good question. I do lay all things bare in this book. And I think I was most concerned about all the sexual stuff because I know it's what bothers my mom the most. Like, she wants nothing to do with this book. She lived it the first time. But in Division, I that's very much based on my life too. And I say in one part that how were you a bad kid? And I said, lying, cheating, stealing drugs, all the good stuff. And my mom's like, I'm glad you didn't say sex. Like, everything else is okay to mess around with, but nobody should know that I wasn't a proper lady at all times. But that's what kids are dealing with. It's what she dealt with. So I think we're getting away from such prudish strictures on women, especially, thankfully.
At least we now know what's off limits for your mom as well. You've been able to
Yeah,
recount these events with so much levity and humor, which I feel is so authentic to you, just even earlier on in this conversation. And feels also very slice of life. As you were writing this, did you find that those moments found themselves? What was that was that balance something that you were mindful of as you were penning it?
no, you absolutely nailed it, that they found themselves. I've always had sort of gallows humor, and in confronting the darkness of life, I always make a joke of it because that's the only way I know how to get by. Um, so I wasn't trying like, oh, I should put a joke here. It was just like, this happened. Here's my joke about it. Like, it came very naturally, as you said. Yeah.
You've also said in previous interviews that you don't recognize the person that is in this memoir. If you could share advice with your younger self, what would it be and why?
Oh gosh, love yourself. I would tell that to everybody if I could, and especially young women. Study harder. School's important. That would have been good. Stay away from drugs. That would and boys are a waste of time. I guess if I had one thing to tell her, I would tell her five things as I just did.
Incredible. You also recorded the audiobook for this. What was that experience like? I imagine it's one thing to write about this 20 years ago, and it's another to share these stories through spoken word.
Oh, well, that was so much fun because my husband's actually an audiobook narrator. So we have a recording booth in our basement. So there was no excuse for me not to do it, especially because he knows how to do all the editing and sound processing that would totally escape me. And I had so much fun with it. I've tried to get into doing audiobooks with him, and I hate being in that booth. But it turns out when it's my own story, it was actually really fun. I really tore through it. Experience those things again, telling the story. It was very affecting. It
Mm.
was an emotional experience, but it was really satisfying too.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful journey that you take readers on from surviving to now thriving. What do you hope they take away after they pick up this memoir?
Thank you so much, Kevin. That's really nice to say. I hope that people take away from this that no matter what has been in their past, they can make anything out of their future.
You've also started writing this sequel to this, to The Brink. What did you learn from writing this first memoir that you're now going to be able to apply to further? And is there anything that you can tease about that?
The Brink sequel is called Further because, as shocking as it may be, I do go further out on the brink. Um, there's hope at the, not to spoil it, but I do in the preface anyway, that things got even worse than they were. It seems like there's hope at the end of the first book. But I was in no position to go off to college. So this is that story, but it's also the story of me through my family, through my passion for acting, getting back on my feet and the lessons I start to learn in my life. Although there might be a third book, Kevin.
Mm.
I had initially sat down to write my whole story. And then, I had 300 pages by the time I wasn't even to college. So I'm like, I think this is part A.
You've also written and produced. Are there any plans to maybe potentially take this memoir to a different medium, maybe on the screen or through a television series?
From your words. So yeah, I have a friend that would like to make it a series. I'd love to develop it that way. I have a screenplay based on some of the more harrowing parts of it. Uh, and it's called The Brink. So that's ready to go, but a series probably makes more sense because there's
Yeah, there's so
so
much.
much in there. It would be a shame to leave stuff out.
Yeah. And like you're
Yeah.
saying, it could be potentially 3 books. So it's perfect for for television. You've also said in the past that, the people closest to you have learned new things about you having read this memoir. What are those kind of conversations that you've had with them? Have you found that the relationships have strengthened as a result of releasing this book?
So much of my community is still in Los Angeles. I'm doing a reading uh
Oh, love that.
of the book, yeah, in here in Atlanta area for anyone in the area. So that's next month, and I think that will be um an interesting way to connect more with the audience. But mostly I've just heard from people that, you were naughty, you were really bad. And I think that's surprising because I come off kind of straight laced.
Mm.
So I think people were really shocked. But I haven't, I've heard from some people I went to high school with saying, like, I didn't realize you were going through this. And, it's amazing you're here. And that's been kind of heavy. Yeah.
Mm. That's meant to you and the human spirit as well. Outside of this memoir, you're also such a multifaceted talent. How did you discover your passion for the arts and storytelling as a whole?
Oh gosh. Thank you for saying that as well. You're very nice, Kevin. Uh, I grew up doing it. It was so silly. It just from day one, kindergarten, lead in that play, lead in the first grade play. They needed someone to go up on stage, get Jaime. Like it was it, and I even would write poetry in elementary school. It was bad. It was real bad. I'm not gonna lie. I wasn't a young genius at poesy, but and then I wrote a TV episode, sort of. It was like a TV
Mm.
movie when I was in junior high. And I wish I'd followed through more on writing because I didn't discover writing again till later. I was really focused on acting, which has been great. I've been very fortunate to have the career I've had.
When you look at your career as a whole, who or what has had the biggest influence, either personally or professionally?
I always thought I'd want a mentor. I feel like you're looking for a mentor here. I always wish that I wonder what my career path would have been like if I had
Mm,
someone guiding it. Because I lost my sister when I was 24 and she was 30. And she kind of was that for me when I was a bad kid, like in the books. She's like kind of not literally smack me around. What are you doing? And when I got back on the path, she was my biggest cheerleader. You know, a lot of the family didn't really take it seriously. Oh, she's an actress, sure. You know, what are you really going to do? But she was so supportive of that.
mm,
So I've really missed that. So I would say she was a huge influence. And I had a lot of projects after she passed that had weird ties to her.
mm,
It's been kind of magical. So I feel like losing someone close to you makes you think a lot more about the afterlife. And I just hope
mm.
there is one. So because I like to think of her being like, yeah, you did these
Yeah.
things.
You're honoring her through your work. And this is one of the most challenging industries to be a part of. And despite that, you've had so much success in your career. When you look back, is there a moment that stands out, during those more challenging times? How have you been able to persevere?
It's not always been easy. And sometimes I wish I'd been more appreciative when things really started happening for me, and been able to capitalize on them more because uh, I it's just a kind word here or there, like the kind things you've said. That's what keeps me going. I know it should be
Mm,
inside and not from outside gratification, but we're artists and we do need feedback to keep going. And for when I wrote my play, it was part of this comedy series, but it wasn't really right for that. But someone was like, you know what, keep going, write that play. And that was such a catalyst for everything for me writing again. So it never hold back from telling someone a supportive word because you never know where they are at and how much it could mean to them.
love that. I think art's supposed to be entertaining, but I think with this memoir, it's going to really impact a lot of people in their lives. And you were talking about this earlier, but you also have a film out, Division, which you wrote, produced, and starred in. Can you tell us a little about the inspiration behind that story and how have your experiences behind the camera impacted the way that you now approach your work on screen as an actress and vice versa?
It's made such a difference in my acting to have had that experience behind the camera and how everything works is so grounding. I've felt so good about the work I've done since doing that movie. Like, well, if I can do that, I can do anything. This is nothing,
Mm,
being on a big film set is nothing. I did my own film set. The impetus for that was I'm a very politically passionate person. And I was really disturbed by, I mean, we were all disturbed by the pandemic and the circumstances around the election of 2020. They were really frightening to me. And I used that as a launching point to tell a personal story, which was me connecting with a fan online and uh, what would happen if it turned that they did
mm.
have a connection and it seems like fate, but they wind up having uh, conflicting politics. And can they come together or do they prove we're too far apart?